find it very worthwhile, for sure. So.
Yep, we're excited to have Kim back. She's one of our favorite speakers. Also happens to be my sister-in-law, so, but I think that'll be great. Next month,
Next month, we are having Johanna Bergerman come and speak with us. She is a neuro PT, and she has her own Parkinson's clinic in Minster, and they do a lot of the rock steady boxing, and she also does some really other cool balance things with the harness. So she's going to kind of share with us some of the things she's been working on and finding success with, and she always brings a lot of fresh stuff too. So that will be October, which just feels crazy to say.
It does. It does feel crazy. So, okay, I think anything else? Because everybody knows us, right?
Everybody knows us,
Our
everybody
friends,
yes.
yes.
Yes. But yeah, we'll let Kim introduce herself, and thank you so
I'm
much
excited
for
about
being
this.
here.
I've never heard of this before.
I am so excited too, so we'll let you take over.
All right, thank you again for coming. My name is Kim Oswald. I am a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian since 2009, so over 15 years. I worked in a couple different capacities. Primarily right now, I do nutrition counseling, virtual nutrition counseling for a company called Nourish. My husband and I have our own print shop, and I have 2 boys at home, so kind of a little bit of everything. So today we're going to talk about the MIND diet. Has anybody heard of the MIND diet? What? Just one. All right, good. So lots to learn. So we're just going to dive right in. So we're going to talk about a little bit about what happens as our brain ages and gets older, how diet can play a role in that process, what the MIND diet is, important nutrients for brain health, foods that the MIND diet encourages, and then foods that we also want to try to kind of minimize a little bit, and then some extra little tips for following that MIND diet. So what happens as our brain ages? Hormones change, right? So estrogen levels start to drop, and estrogen kind of acts as like, helps with signaling of those neurotransmitter signaling in our brain. Testosterone levels, especially in men, starts to drop. Our brain size actually decreases as well. It's going to get more uplifting, I promise. So we have a decrease in neurotransmitters, especially dopamine and serotonin, which is that communication system of our brain, right? So we might have trouble finding words. We have maybe some delayed thought processes, less muscle control, those types of things. And then, just like how we hear about cardiovascular disease and that plaque buildup that can happen in our heart, same thing can happen in our brain as well. So we might have decreased blood flow, and we might have those blockages or some plaque buildup that might actually happen in our brain as well. So there's a diet that can help prevent those things. Improving our diet, so incorporating some of the things we're about to talk about, can improve blood flow, reduce inflammation, which is huge, right? If you haven't heard about inflammation,
Yeah, it's like all the rage right now.
it is. So we'll talk a lot about how we can calm down that inflammation in our body, how we can prevent that plaque buildup, and even improve our sleep, our memory, stress, and even anxiety. So the body, it's all connected, right? So not just focusing on the brain, but how it can improve other things too. So what is the MIND diet? It's a combination essentially of 2 of the best diets that are out there, and this isn't my opinion, this is what the research is showing us. 2 of the healthiest diets in the world, the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. So DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Or high blood pressure. DASH is very similar to the Mediterranean diet, but it actually has some additional restrictions or emphasis on potassium and calcium and magnesium, especially that sodium. So the MIND diet encompasses some of the Mediterranean, some of the DASH, and then it adds a couple extra little things that they found could actually help boost brain health. So the Mediterranean diet, as a little refresher if you're not familiar, it's rich in whole grains, fruits, vegetables, seafood, olive oil, and red wine. The DASH diet, again, is very similar, but it also looks closely at sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. So the MIND diet focuses on antioxidant-rich foods, especially berries and green leafy vegetables. Those are kind of two big differences. There's a lot of research, and we'll talk more about it, but there's a lot of research to show that those berries, especially strawberries and blueberries, but all berries are great, and those leafy greens can be extra beneficial for the brain. It also focuses on those omega-3s, those heart healthy and brain healthy fats, as well as other healthy fats, and it's really rich in fiber. Fiber-rich foods like beans, like some of those dry roasted beans that you're, or maybe not dry roasted, but roasted beans that you're trying, and legumes.
Legumes, that's what these are, baked legumes.
So I thought some of these stats were a little bit interesting. So there's been over 150 different papers published on the cognition benefits of the MIND diet. So there's quite a bit out there. The MIND diet can slow brain aging by 7.5 years, which I just think it's fantastic. It's phenomenal. It can decrease the risk of Alzheimer's disease by 53%. It can delay the onset of Parkinson's by 17.4 years and slow the progression of the disease in those with Parkinson's. It's twice as effective as the Mediterranean diet in decreasing the severity of Parkinson's symptoms. And it doesn't have to be done perfectly. From what I've been reading, we don't have to have like all of the MIND diet things in place. Even just incorporating a little bit here and there can be helpful. So what foods are encouraged on the MIND diet? We mentioned the berries and the leafy green vegetables, also whole grains, nuts and seeds, dried beans and peas, seafood, poultry, other vegetables, and that can really be any other vegetable, olive oil, and red wine. And we're going to talk through each one of those. So you can notice there's 10 things there. So there's 10 foods that are encouraged, or kind of categories of foods. And then there's 5 foods that we want to try to watch out for. So cheese gets limited on the MIND diet to about 1 ounce.
1 ounce is like 0 cheese.
1 ounce is, I know, that's like I don't like to, 1 ounce is about a cheese stick. I weighed this because I was like, how much is this? And this is like 0.9 of an ounce. So this is about an ounce.
A week though.
A week.
A week. Okay.
I know. And it's cheese, especially the higher fat cheese, which as a dietitian, I don't usually ever recommend like the fat-free cheese because no one likes it. It doesn't melt. It doesn't taste good. So the reduced fat is doable, but fat-free is hard. Butter and margarine, the recommendation is to limit to 1 tablespoon per day. If you're choosing a margarine, definitely watching out for those trans fats, if it's got those hydrogenated oils. I personally take the path of I buy the butter that's got the olive oil kind of whipped into it, so it kind of dilutes down that saturated fat that's found in the butter. But the goal there is 1 tablespoon or less per day. Red meat to 3 to 4 servings or less per week. Which I thought that was kind of interesting, that you get more red meat, but so little cheese when it's both has saturated fat, but this is what the research kind of found. Fried foods, less than 1 serving per week. Fast foods, less than 1 serving per week. Sweets and pastries, less than 5 servings per week. Although it doesn't define an actual serving, but in the nutrition world, a serving is actually, it's pretty small. Like a serving of cake is usually that size. So with a little thin layer of frosting. So trying to ultimately, trying to limit those things that are going to be more inflammatory. So when it comes to berries, again, the strawberries and the blueberries have the most research kind of backing them, but all berries have very similar properties too. So, if you strawberries and the blueberries, mix it up with the, blackberries, raspberries, things like that. The goal was at least 2 1/2 cup servings a week.
Kim, I want to ask you kind of a non-nutrition-ish question,
Okay.
but one that comes up because I have some berry eaters at my house. But what is the best way to clean berries so that because I know they're kind of on the pesticide list and I try to buy organic when I can, but it's hard. And then I know what grows inside of berries, and so what's the healthiest way to clean them well?
So it's not a glamorous answer, but what the is it USDA or FDA? USDA is telling us, I was confused the two. When I looked recently, because I get this question all the time, the best way to clean your produce is really with running water. Just running water and friction. So if you can rub it, even better, or if it's something that has a thick skin, like a potato, use a scrub brush kind of thing. And Shannon is
Blackberries and raspberries give me fits to clean, because
so
they have the
delicate.
full inside and
Yeah.
they're delicate on the outside.
and with those, the less submerging in the water, the better, because
Okay.
otherwise they're just gonna fall apart. So, but we still want to try to wash them, right? So yeah, clean running water. I think running water is the biggest thing with that too. So not glamorous, but that's what the research, and who knows, maybe years from now we'll find that there's other methods that work better, but there's just not solid research backing.
Yeah,
Other
I know,
methods.
there used to be something at the grocery store you could use, but then I'm it seems counterintuitive to add stuff to clean. Yeah, and I know sometimes I've heard alkaline water or something, it was better to clean them, but I just thought I would ask, cause I'm just trying to not have worms on my house.
Yeah, and I didn't put it in here, I contemplated, but there is the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So, if you haven't heard of it, you can Google it, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. It's through the Environmental Working Group, so EWG.org. They have a little printable, I might even have it in my wallet, let's see, I could pass it around if I do, I kept it in there for a while. But it's basically 12, so the Dirty Dozen, the dirtiest, the foods that tend to have the most pesticides and herbicides on them. So those might be some that, if you're trying to prioritize your dollar, those might be the ones that you prioritize because they are the dirtiest, what the research is showing. Strawberries typically top that list. They're usually the top 3 every single year. But I know too, you go to the grocery store and it's $6 for a small package of strawberries. That's difficult to sometimes do, right? So the research also shows that the benefits of eating produce, organic or not, still outweighs the risk of not eating the produce. So you can find my little, it's kind of hard to see, but you can pass it around. This is for 2024. There's probably a 2025 version, and you might not even be able to see it, it's tiny. But they usually don't change too much from year to year. You got the Dirty Dozen, and then the Clean 15 are the fruits and vegetables that typically have the lowest amounts of pesticides or herbicides. So it might not make sense to spend extra money on those. So let's see, Clean 15, what's the top of the Clean 15 list? Sweet corn, avocados, pineapple, onions, papaya. Those are things you might not need to buy organic. Whereas strawberries, they are number 1. Then spinach, so we're wanting to eat leafy greens, so kale, collard, and mustard greens are also on that Dirty Dozen list. So you can prioritize to do the organic, great, but not getting hung up on it. All right. So berries are high in flavonoids. Flavonoids is a fancy word for a phytonutrient, which acts very similarly to an antioxidant, which helps calm down that inflammation in our body. So it reduces inflammation and oxidation. I think of oxidation, if you're not familiar with that word, I think of it as when you cut an apple and it starts to turn brown, that's actually oxidation. So the same thing can body, when free radicals form, when we maybe have more inflammation, or we eat some things that are inflammatory, we get this inflammation, we get this oxidation. But what happens when we add lemon juice to an apple?
It stays white.
It stays white. It prevents that oxidation. And what is lemon juice? An antioxidant, right? So that antioxidant helps prevent that oxidation. So these antioxidants can help prevent. We'll have some free radicals that form in our body, and I kind of think of these as just like bad, I think of them as like little fires actually. But like free radicals are natural, like they're going to form, but we want to try to offset that with antioxidants. And our body can produce some antioxidants, but we also need to get some from our foods too. So berries can also help improve memory and slow cognitive aging. So how can we add these to our diet? Maybe throwing them on yogurt or oatmeal, tossing them on a salad, adding them to water to kind of help flavor your water, and then you can eat them when you're done drinking your water. Making a salsa, snacking on them works just fine too.
Berry salsa.
Yeah, you can make like a strawberry salsa to put like on your chicken or fish. Do what it's like. And then leafy greens. So the recommendation is 1 serving of leafy greens 6 times a week. So almost every day. A serving is a half of a cup cooked. So if you're going to cook spinach, a half of a cup of cooked spinach, or 1 cup raw, which isn't truly a whole lot, right? Like a pretty small side salad. So leafy greens are very nutrient rich. They're rich in carotenoids, which is a fancy word for another phytonutrient. They can help reduce rates of cognitive decline. And I just listed a few, but there's kale, there's spinach, there's Swiss chard, Brussels sprouts, actually Brussels sprouts are supposed to be on the next list. Romaine lettuce, collard greens, any of those green leafy vegetables are great. And sometimes you can sneak these into, throw some spinach in some soup or casseroles, having them as sides. Side salads are a great, like I said, addition. Whole grains. So ideally we want to aim for at least 3 servings of whole grains per day. A serving is about a half of a cup cooked or 1 slice of bread. So these have fiber, which not only helps us to kind of stay full longer, but also helps to feed those good bugs in our gut. And have any of you been hearing about how our gut health and our brain health are connected? Yeah, there's this like bi-directional relationship between our gut health and our brain health. And so we want to make sure we have a lot of good bugs in our gut to keep our brain healthy and the rest of our body healthy. So whole grains help feed the probiotics, those good bugs. They also have B vitamins and zinc. We'll talk more about B vitamins and zinc. They'll pop up again. They provide energy for our brain, decrease cognitive decline. So where do we find whole grains? We can find them in our whole grain bread, whole grain pasta, rice. So brown rice, wild rice, those count as a whole grain, whereas white rice doesn't. So that could be a swap. There's my oatmeal. Now, one of the things, I'll pass a couple things around so you can kind of take a peek. Have you ever noticed this little like whole grain postage stamp on things? It kind of hides sometimes, and not all grain products have it. I think it's up to like whoever makes it to decide if they want to put it on there. But it looks like this, and it tells you how many grams of whole grains there are per serving. It also tells you if it's a 100% whole grain or not. So 100% whole grain is basically saying that all of the grains in that product are in fact whole. There's no processed grains, there's no white flour. So, let me see if I've got, I don't know if I actually have, like this one doesn't, this one could carry the 100% whole grain stamp, but they don't have a stamp for whatever reason, because it has, it's a pasta made out of brown rice flour. And brown rice counts as a whole grain, so that would count. What about multigrain? Does multigrain count as a whole grain? one, it's got organic rice flour. Is that a whole grain? Organic rice?
Yes.
No, you should say brown.
It doesn't say what type, so I'm gonna assume it's white, because, and then the next ingredient is organic brown rice flour. So the first ingredient is essentially white rice flour. Ingredients are listed by weight, so that's gonna take on the most weight in the product. So then it's got the brown rice flour, and then it's got corn flour, and then it has quinoa flour, which also counts as a whole grain. Corn actually counts as a whole grain as well. So it has a little stamp on there. It has some whole grains in it, so that can be a good choice. Is it 100% whole grain? No, and usually they're not if it says multi-grain. That's kind of a little marketing tactic that they sometimes use. Another thing that tripped me up one time, I bought bread and it said 100% wheat bread. Was that a whole grain? Nope. It wasn't. And so why do we care if it's a whole grain or not? So whole grains have more fiber. They help keep us full longer. They provide more nutrients for us. So that bread, it was 100% wheat. There was no other grains in it, but it was processed wheat. So it was essentially a white bread. They just changed the words on it. It's tricky. Let's see. Popcorn is one of my favorite whole grains. I think it's a great snack. So that can be a good option too. And then if you're looking at a product that's a whole grain, ideally trying to strive for looking for things that have 3 grams of fiber per serving. Kind of a good rule of thumb there.
What if you're looking for flour? What would be a whole grain flour?
So whole grain flour could be whole wheat flour. It could be brown rice flour. It could be millet. Millet is a whole grain, and you can find that sometimes in a flour form or turn it into a flour yourself. There's even oat flour. So oats are a whole grain. You can turn this into a flour.
What about almond flour?
Oh, that's a good question. It has the word flour in it. So almond flour is just ground up almonds. So technically it's not a grain. It kind of falls in the nut category. So we could count that towards your serving of nuts once we talk about that. But yeah, those are a few options for flours. Oh,
So, if you buy oatmeal that's not processed, that you have to cook yourself,
Yeah.
is that considered a whole?
absolutely, yep. Oats are one of those things that they'll always count as a whole grain. On here it actually says whole grain oats, but a lot of times it'll just say oats, and that's fine. Otherwise, I do try to look for the word whole, especially when you're looking for in terms of wheat-based products. If you see that word enriched wheat flour, is that a whole grain? No, you're right, it's not. So basically they take that whole wheat kernel, they shell off the outside, they get rid of some of the inside part. They discard it, usually they use that in animal feed. That outside part, that's where a lot of the fiber is, right? Just like in an apple, a lot of that fiber is in the peel. Same thing when we're talking about like a whole grain kernel. A lot of that fiber is in the outside part, so when we get rid of it, we miss out on a lot of fiber and vitamins and minerals. So by law, they have to enrich it, which means add back some of those vitamins and minerals. And you'll usually see that on the label. Actually, I think in this bread, it's kind of a combination. They don't have any enriched flour. It looks like it might have all whole grain flour in there that I'm looking at. So, but that's just something that you might kind of pay attention to. Nuts and seeds, trying to aim for 5 or more servings per week. I round it out and kind of say about a serving a day. So a serving is about 1 ounce. So I measured it out. Usually we say it's about the size of like the palm of your hand, 1 layer thick. Or I put some peanuts. I measured out a serving of peanuts. Usually it's about 1/4 of a cup. So that's about a serving of peanuts. So you can pass it around so you can get an idea of what that looks like. But nuts and seeds are really high in vitamin E, which is an antioxidant. Healthy fats, those unsaturated fats, zinc, as well as some of them will have those omega-3s. So omega-3s are a type of fat that our bodies cannot make. It's considered an essential we find omega-3s, but one of our best nut sources, if we're looking at nuts, walnuts. Walnuts kind of have more bragging rights than any other nut at having those omega-3s. So walnuts, and then as far as seeds go, chia seeds. Have any of you had chia seeds?
Yeah.
Yeah? What do you do with your chia seeds?
I put it in my granola and in my yogurt.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Anybody else like or use chia?
Energy balls.
Oh,
Yeah, energy balls, yes. I like it as a thing to make for time, you know, in our spare time.
Has anybody ever done the chia pudding?
They bulk up, right?
They do. They soak up a lot of liquid. So I love making chia pudding with them. I like the chocolate chia pudding because it gives me that like sweet chocolatey taste. But I just mix them with some, you can Google recipes, but mix it with some milk, cocoa powder. I do add a little bit of like maple syrup or honey, vanilla. Stir it up, throw it in your fridge overnight. It thickens up, it soaks up a lot of that liquid. So the big thing with chia seeds is because they like to soak up so much liquid, we don't really want to just like eat it by the spoonful. It wouldn't be very pleasant either. Because as they're going down your digestive tract, they're going to start trying to pull some water. I don't know of anybody that's eaten chia seeds plain like that. But I always just give the disclaimer because truly they could cause a bowel blockage if you just ate chia seeds without like having fluid with them. But again, I think that's pretty rare. But I always like to mention it just to be safe.
If it was in a smoothie, I tried it in a
Oh,
smoothie
yeah.
and it bulked it all up. I mean, it was so thick, you could hardly have to eat it with a spoon.
Yeah, if you let it sit for a while, it definitely, I can put it in a smoothie, but if it sits for a bit, it does thicken up.
It makes a mess when it falls open.
Let's see, did I mention all my seeds? Flax seeds. Flax seeds also have omega-3s as well. So again, kind of same things, you can throw them in a smoothie, energy balls, on top of oatmeal. I've had clients that stir it into like pasta sauce. Sometimes they can kind of get lost in things. With the flax seeds, you just want to make sure that they're ground before you eat them. If you eat them whole, it's not going to harm you, but you just won't be able, your body has a hard time pulling out those omega-3s. It does a better job when they're ground. So you can buy it ground or you can grind them yourself. Hemp seeds, does anybody use hemp seeds or hemp hearts?
And parts.
Yeah. So again, just another really good source of omega-3s. They also have they're a good source of protein, fiber. I kind of use them the same way on top of yogurt and smoothies. I thrown this on a salad before too, because it does kind of have a little bit of a greenish taste, slightly green taste, a green nutty taste. That's my description. So I'll throw it on a salad. Kind of boost the nutrients a little bit. And then we'll talk about another source of omega-3s in a little bit. So they can reduce inflammation, help with cognitive function. We can add them as snacks, salads, oatmeal, yogurt. Beans, peas, and lentils. The goal is to get 3 or more half-cup servings per week. So we get fiber, lean protein, B vitamins, folate, and those antioxidants. It helps reduce cholesterol levels, which can help reduce our risk for cardiovascular disease, as well as that plaque buildup in our brain. Helps, of course, that fiber helps keep our GI tract healthy. So we can, again, add them to soups, stews, casseroles. We can throw them on a salad. We can snack on them. What do you think of the chickpea snacks?
Yeah, did you guys like the roasted chickpeas? The little balls?
I did.
Balls?
Yeah.
I never had them before. And the other lentil, the pea, what are those? Baked snack peas.
Sometimes it's kind of nice as like they're a more filling snack than like.
They satisfy like that salty, crunchy.
Yeah, I'm thinking like,
you want a
yeah.
salty, crunchy
If I
thing.
wanted like a healthy snack, like if I had a glass of red wine at night and I wanted a snack with it, I could just eat something like that and just,
Instead of chips.
my brain would just be
So happy.
Not a whole bottle of it.
Right.
like,
Yeah. We'll talk about
the
that.
lentils though, like one thing, I try to get my kids to eat like beans and it's hard because, I don't know, it's just like not a something that children like often. But, and we raise, beef, so like we eat too much beef, I think, red meat, so I've been trying to like buy more ground turkey, but then they're like, oh, this is weird. But I have found, like, if you put taco seasoning in ground turkey, it literally tastes just like taco meat. But then I'll put like the black beans like in, or, you know, pinto beans, like in with the meat, and then it's kind of like not so yuck to them, because it's not like a pile of beans, it's just kind of like all mixed up together. So now we almost like don't make it without beans, because it seems weird, because now our taco meat just like always has beans in it. So that's kind of how I do it. Yeah. And it makes your meat go a lot further too. 'cause-
Yeah.
The taco turkey is, yeah, I swear by it.
And lentils, you can throw lentils in with like ground beef or, you know, ground turkey too. Or like a lot of vegan recipes will use like lentils in place of meat sometimes. So sometimes that can stretch your dollar too and add some extra nutrients. Yeah. Let's see, you can snack on roasted beans or hummus with veggies. Do we have any hummus fans? Yeah, which is basically like a bean dip. And there's all sorts, like if you've tried it and it's been a while, maybe give it another go. There's all sorts, there's like a lentil hummus, there's a black bean hummus, there's different
Yeah,
bean
there's all
hummuses
kinds of
now.
flavors now.
And flavors.
They make a hot honey hummus, but I'm just like addicted to it now. Yeah.
And when you're hungry, go to the section of Kroger's that has the hummus, and they all look amazing. Or even now the gas station, you can get, they have like little cups of hummus with like pretzel chips in them.
Mhm.
And so like we drove to Columbus and back this weekend, and like that was the best snack that I could identify at the gas station was a hummus cup, but it was good. Fill me up.
So seafood, for the Mind diet, the recommendation is at least one serving per week. Now, if you're familiar with other diets, like the Mediterranean diet, they push fish a little bit harder, so at least 2 servings per week. So I would say like if you can do 2 or more, even better. What did I read? In people who had higher DHA, which is a type of omega-3 that we get from fish, in those that ate fish 4 times per week, they had, how do I say this? Less cognitive aging by 4 years. I remembered it, it's like 4 days a week, your brain is essentially 4 years younger. It's like, did I do that? So it's a good source of protein. Again, you get the DHA and the EPA, which are just basically 2 types of omega-3s that are found in fish. So it can be, doesn't have to be anything fancy. My husband and I have been leaning on these a lot lately because they're just so quick and convenient. So this is just like a tuna pouch and a salmon pouch, so we keep those on hand. Anybody like sardines?
No, but those are also all the rage right now too.
Are they really? Is it a
Yeah.
TikTok thing?
I don't know, but healthy people eat sardines, like it's literally.
So weird.
So
Somebody like little salt.
Iron, I forget what's in it.
So it's just a tiny little fish. So, but if you buy the fillets, then there's no like,
Bones, heads,
bones.
eyeballs.
Yeah, none of that stuff. Looking back at you. So I tried sardines like years ago, and it was just it just didn't go well. I think I didn't buy it. I can't even remember. I feel like it was looking back at me or something. So I didn't try it for years, and every time I talk about like fish with clients, they're like, well, sardines, like, do you eat sardines? And I have to admit that I don't. So I'm like, okay, I need to try them again. So I recently tried them again. I like them better than tuna, actually. Like, they're not scary at all. Like, I just need to say, like, just change the word, throw this in a tuna pouch, and no one would know the difference. Like, I like the kind that's in olive oil, and so I think it's less dry than tuna, I would say, but has similar taste profile. So if you like tuna, you might try the sardines, give them another try, but just get the fillets, unless you like things,
Adventurous.
unless you're very adventurous. And then you have them in like mustard sauce and things like that. So that was how I first tried it. I was like, okay, I can just make my own mustard sauce. So I did like Dijon mustard, sardines, and crackers.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, this isn't bad at all. Like I can just do these like on a salad or something.
but like the Mediterranean diet is a highly recommended diet, and I always get freaked out by the amount of fish that's on it. So, but I can sometimes eat tuna like that, but then I didn't know, maybe because it feels so easy, it feels like it's not fish enough.
No,
Is
it
that fish enough?
absolutely is fish enough. Yeah,
Okay.
it works.
Okay, I might be able to do that.
That Safe Catch brand.
So I like this brand. I get it at Kroger, or I order it online through Vitacost.
Is it with the regular tuna? Cause I've never seen that brand of our Kroger.
It is. I don't know if all Krogers have it. I don't think Walmart has it.
Chiefs have it. Chiefs grocery store.
Yeah. I like the website. It's called Vitacost. You don't have to have a membership, and if you spend so much, you get free shipping. And they have a lot of similar products. They have like the Simple Truth line.
Oh,
So if you get some like Kroger products,
so
actually
Vita
cheaper.
cost.
Vita, VITA cost.
You don't have to worry about why I caught.
Good question. So, do I have it up here? So, when we're talking about fish, so the higher fat fish like the salmon, tuna, mackerel, herring, trout, sardines, those are going to be highest in omega-3s. Although they actually will even consider, to check the box for getting your one serving a week, even shellfish technically will count. When you're looking at, I think it's always a good idea to kind of see where it's coming from. Although what I've been reading, like sometimes wild caught isn't actually the best choice compared to some, depending on how things are, where it's raised, all of those things.
Some farms are cleaner than some oceans.
Yeah, or just, different ocean like farming practices. And, I think last time when I presented, we talked a little bit about mercury in fish. So if you know, like tuna is a big fish. It can collect mercury. And so mercury is considered a neurotoxin, and it can harm those dopamine producing cells. From what I've read, the benefits of eating even tuna outweigh the risks. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think one is because there's other things in the tuna that when we eat it, it helps kind of protect us, like selenium and things like that. So the research is showing that the benefits outweigh the risks. But if you like tuna, choosing like the Safe Catch or Wild Planet, they do a lot of testing of their tuna to make sure that it is lower in mercury. And then doing like the skipjack tuna tends to have more, or have less mercury than like the albacore and some of those other types. So sometimes I'll try to do like, I don't really notice a whole big difference between the salmon pouch and the tuna pouch. So sometimes I'll do like more in the way of the salmon and just kind of tell myself it's tuna. But I do try to encourage like the Pacific salmon as opposed to like the Atlantic, just because the Atlantic salmon does typically have more of those contaminants in it. But again, benefits still outweigh the risks.
What was the other one besides Safe Catch? You said what?
Wild Planet
Wild
is another one. And there's other benefits in that seafood too. So we also get vitamin D, which can help lower inflammation. B vitamins, it's got the DHA, which is that omega-3, which can reduce that plaque buildup in the brain. So, super healthy for us. There we go. Poultry, so the recommendation on the Mind diet is to aim for 2 servings per week for poultry. So it's a nice lean protein. Those B vitamins that we've been seeing all throughout, those can help again lower homocysteine levels. Homocysteine is a marker for inflammation. And then it also has zinc, and we've been seeing zinc throughout too in some of those nuts and seeds, things like that. Zinc is the most concentrated mineral that's found in the brain and can actually help reduce amyloid protein buildup, so that plaque buildup in the brain. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that until I researched the Mind diet. And then vegetables. So we talked about those leafy green vegetables and trying to get like a serving of those 6 days a week or more. But then also, you just aren't left with getting one serving of vegetables, but trying to get another serving of vegetables in your day, if not several, is going to offer additional benefits. But trying to get at least one other vegetable in, and it can be really anything: squash, peppers, eggplants, carrots, peas, corn, whatever you like. At least one serving per day. So a serving, again, is a half a cup of cooked or 1 cup of raw vegetables. But yeah, the more the better. I was really surprised that it was just one other vegetable. I thought it would be a lot more, because in some of the other diets, like the DASH diet, those fruit and vegetable recommendations go up to, there's recommendations that go up to 9 to 11 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So the more the better. I have never told anyone, never, in my 15 years, that you're eating too many vegetables. So, cruciferous vegetables, this is actually not specifically part of the MIND diet, but I wanted to call it out just because I think that there are extra perks for individuals with Parkinson's. So cruciferous vegetables have a compound called sulforaphane, and this may actually help with those motor deficits and help protect those dopaminergic neurons and provide that neuroprotection. So there's research to show that. So sulforaphane, really for anyone, can increase glutathione levels in our body. Glutathione is considered the master antioxidant in our body. So it's a very powerful antioxidant. It's found in, again, any of those cruciferous vegetables. Those are usually your stinky sulfur vegetables. So like your broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, kohlrabi, radishes, turnips, those types of things. And a little fun fact, has anybody, well, question first, I guess. Has anybody tried like broccoli sprouts or the microgreens?
I feel like in restaurants maybe,
Yeah.
I've never bought them. Are they like healthier than regular broccoli?
So they are more concentrated in sulforaphane than actually broccoli is. So yeah, they're like, I get my kids to eat, well, one of my kids to eat it because I call them little baby broccolis, because they're just like little sprouts, and so we make a whole fun thing of it. But they do taste very similar to broccoli, but they're just more concentrated with that sulforaphane. And you can, like, I love adding them like on top of eggs, or you can easily throw it on top of a salad too. Restaurants sometimes they'll get fancy and use it as like a garnish on chicken or fish, or things like that. Sometimes it can be hard to find. Kroger sometimes will have them, or you can grow your own if you're interested in that, or sometimes farmers markets. Olive oil gets special attention on the MIND diet. It's rich in those healthy fats, vitamin E, which is an antioxidant, and polyphenols, which is a phytonutrient, a healthy plant compound. So ideally, we want to use this as our main oil, and 1 to 2 tablespoons per day. So it's a little tricky though, right? Because, so this is extra virgin olive oil. Would this be a good oil to like cook at a really high temperature?
No.
No, because it's going to break down, and then it's going to actually maybe cause more free radicals once it breaks down. So this is more of like a finishing oil, or a very low heat, or maybe like your own salad dressings. That's another good use for it. But you can get by with cooking with olive oil if it isn't the extra virgin, if it's more processed. So the extra virgin, or that cold pressed, if you see cold pressed, then that's that first pressing of the olives. That's the kind that we don't want to heat up too high. But if you get the kind that's more refined, and typically it will say refined, or just simply olive oil, then that could be an acceptable choice for a little bit higher heat. Or I love avocado oil. That's not specifically called out, but that could still be incorporated as a healthy oil for like a higher
I buy,
heat.
so that's pretty much like, cause you can get that at Aldi, avocado
Yeah.
oil and avocado oil.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I was hoping you'd say it was okay, cause
That's what I would do,
Because I'm
because I
hot.
feel like anytime I cook anything, I like just start it on high, and then before I know it, it's like too hot.
Right.
There's been a lot of back and forth with coconut oil and brain health, and I actually even looked in this, I use this book for a lot of my notes too. There's just not a lot of really good research to show that that's gonna be one of the best oils to use, because it still can raise that cholesterol level a little bit too. I think it's fine, it's fine, I think,
Good in high heat, right?
it is very good in high heat, yes, yep. It's still going to be better than like some of our other unhealthier fats too, like margarine, things like that, that have the trans fats. But yeah, a lot of the research is really pointing at the olive oil.
While we're talking about oil, like what's the difference between like butter and ghee? Cause I know like ghee is
He
like,
is all the rage.
yeah, and I'm like,
Is it? I don't know how too many people do ghee. So ghee is, if I remember correctly, it's like a clarified butter.
yeah.
So the lactose component has been removed.
Some butter,
Did I say that right?
some butter off the fat.
Butter without the fat.
Doesn't it have fat though
It
still?
still has some fat to it.
Well, you know, in the restaurant I used to, you can cook, we'd heat the butter and then lay it at the top.
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
pot and
And what's left
put it
was
in
the
clear,
Yeah, yep, perfect. Great description.
yeah.
Let's see, I think we talked about most of that. All right, red wine. This is a tricky one, but we'll talk about it. So red wine contains polyphenols and phenols, again, those just fancy words for basically antioxidants. Anthocyanins and resveratrol are those flavonols, which give that wine that like deep red color. They have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. The recommendation is a 5-ounce glass, that's the key, 5-ounce glass, per day, actually. But I think there's lots of caveats there too, right? Like a lot of the research shows that like if you don't currently drink, it might not be beneficial to actually start. And there's lots of medication interactions with alcohol. So I think that we always have to be very careful there. So those are my caveats with the, not to be like Debbie Downer, but just my caveats with the wine.
Why do they say red? What's wrong with the other wines?
So, the red wine just is higher in those antioxidants, the anthocyanins and the resveratrol, which are very powerful antioxidants that aren't necessarily found in like the white wines. We can actually also find the anthocyanins and resveratrol in blueberries, which we've talked about, right? Peanuts, although a lot smaller amounts, it's mostly in like the skin that most of us don't eat, the skin of the peanut. And grapes, of course, the peeling of the grapes. So they all kind of have that same color. So what about other foods? What about other fruits? It's totally okay to incorporate other fruits, just like the vegetables. Like we still need to ideally get several servings of fruit in a day. So other fruits are definitely still great to include. Same thing with other grains. It's very hard to only eat 100% whole grains all the time, right? Like we still need to live. If we feel like we're restricted, that's probably just going to cause more stress. Oops. Which is going to cause more inflammation, right? I must be going too long here. Same thing with eggs. So eggs, they don't necessarily have a certain limit on the eggs, but typically like 5 eggs or so a week is okay. I personally do a lot more, and there's actually some brain healthy components like choline. Choline is excellent for the brain, and it's found in the egg yolk. So I always say, eat the whole egg.
Is there a difference with the eggs in the free range versus not free range, grain fed versus not grain fed? Like,
Yeah.
I buy the fancy eggs from my mom and I go back and forth on like, should I buy the fancy eggs, should I not buy the fancy
Yeah.
eggs?
So there's, you've got your conventional eggs that, of course there's the living arrangements too, but that could be a whole nother topic. So you've got your free range, which basically, let's see, the free range, they do actually have space to like run around, right? And typically, those are going to be more nutrient dense. And you'll notice that oftentimes that yolk is even more like rich in color.
Duck eggs.
Ooh, duck eggs, yeah. And then you've got your cage-free, which there are certain criteria, and it's interesting because, you know, some of these big farms, they can qualify as cage-free, even though there's still not a lot of room for the chickens to kind of move around in. And I think there is some research to show that there are more nutrients in those, you know, if they're able to kind of move around and forage and eat the bugs and all the things as opposed to just like the grain. And if you are buying the grain fed, then so organic basically is referring to the feed that they're giving them, right? So the organic means that the chicken has to eat organic feed. So it's kind of if you were looking at like the best nutrient quality, it's going to be more like the free range. If you have your own, that's even better, right? Because then you know what's happening to those chickens and what they're eating. Next, I would say would be like the cage-free, and then, you know, the conventional. But again, it's kind of budgeting with your dollar because it's going to cost more. So I think still the benefits of getting, you know, that good quality protein and getting some choline from the eggs still outweighs not having them at all, if you like to feed them. Soy foods, those can also be included. Soy is considered a legume, so it kind of falls in that same category. So you can even, there's all sorts of different types of soy, so the less processed, the better with anything. I typically would recommend, if you can do organic soy, if it's available, just because soy is a crop that is very heavily sprayed. I got these for my kiddos to try. They're not organic. It's hard to find the roasted edamame, which is a soybean. It's hard to find it organic. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna see just expose them, right? Expose them to something different. So that's kind of another, kind of like a roasted chickpea, but a roasted edamame option. Dairy, again, there's not like specifics about dairy with the Mind Diet except for the cheese. But what I thought was interesting is in this book, which I think is a really great resource, I just got it on Amazon, they talk about other cultures like China and Korea, and they actually do incorporate some dairy, but it has specific recommendations, but it's on fermented dairy, which I thought was kind of interesting. So getting some of those good probiotics in. There is also some research to show that whey protein, sometimes even when supplemented in the form of like a protein supplement, 20 grams of whey protein can potentially help with like decreasing that inflammation and homocysteine, especially when it comes to like Parkinson's. So that could be something, especially if you're struggling to like try to get that protein in around those medications. That might be something that might be helpful. Coffee and tea, again, no specific clear cuts there, but they can be stimulating to the brain. Some moderation there, you know, if they do have antioxidants, right? So they can definitely still be included. And then oils, we kind of talked about the oils already. And again, kind of recognizing if you're looking at this and you're like, whoa, I don't know if I can do this. Like thinking about like, how can I incorporate maybe just like, could I add, I like to add things. I'm not big on like, let's take away, let's focus on like, what can we add to our diet first? And then see if anything kind of squeezes itself out. So like, can I do berries a couple times a week? And focusing on that for a little while. And then, hey, can I add a side salad to a day or some vegetable soup at meals or you know, something like that. Some of these things we've kind of talked about. Adding some greens or beans to your broth. Snacking on nuts. Oh, even dried fruit. So like, you know, strawberries, as we get into the winter, they're going to be really expensive. I get these for my kids a lot, but like choosing other options that might be more reasonably priced. So like these are just freeze-dried strawberries, so that could still count as well. Or frozen. Frozen can be great as well. And then of course there's other things, they talk more about like lifestyle changes to help support the MIND diet as well. So exercise, physical activity, maintaining a healthy weight, not smoking, getting adequate sleep, stress reduction, mind stimulating tasks and games, and then that social connection too. Okay, this is totally separate from the MIND diet, but I wanted to mention it in case you didn't hear my talk when I spoke last time, because I think it's very specific for Parkinson's, and I thought it's always kind of good to know. So, some testing and possible supplement considerations for Parkinson's. So, research shows that those with Parkinson's typically have lower levels of vitamin D, especially living in Ohio, especially as we get into the winter months. We're going to see less sunshine, right? So that might be something to ask your doctor. I usually ask my doctor to test mine at least annually, just to kind of see where I'm at, because I tend to dip kind of low with vitamin D as well. Vitamin D is found in mushrooms that have been exposed to UV light, egg yolks, fortified dairy, and of course the sunshine. If your levels are really low, though, you'll probably need a supplement to kind of boost them back up. But I usually recommend testing, and the test for that is the 25-OH vitamin D3. So to test that before supplementing. And then magnesium. So magnesium is found in some of those things we already mentioned, the nuts, the beans, the seeds. Supplementing the diet has improved some Parkinson's symptoms, such as muscle cramping, insomnia, and memory loss. However, there's not a really great test for magnesium. So if you choose to supplement, work with a healthcare provider. There's different types of magnesium supplements out there. There's like 9 different types. Some will help with constipation, and if that's not something you need, then choosing a different type. So finding the right type for you is important. And then omega-3. So omega-3s can be a good option for a supplement if you're the one that just can't stomach the thought of eating fish. That could be an option. And then calcium. So people with Parkinson's tend to have lower bone mineral density. So they are at an increased risk for fractures. So, you might talk with your doctor about like, hey, do you think that a bone density scan is something that would be, should be on my radar. And I always recommend working with primarily a dietitian before you supplement calcium, because there's some research to show that when we do supplement with calcium, if we don't actually need it, and if we get too much, it will not get into our bones, but it will deposit in arteries and could lead to that calcification, that calcified plaque. We don't want that, right? And I know I shouldn't say a lot, I have known doctors who will tell my clients just to go ahead and take a calcium supplement, especially, women. We tend to be scared, right, of like our bone mineral density decreasing and all the things. And so I have this conversation with my mom often, because her doctor will continue to ask her, are you taking your calcium? And I have sat down with her, and she is getting plenty of calcium in her diet, and she really doesn't need to supplement at all. But because she has osteopenia, then she's scared, right? And so every time her doctor says this, then she adds it back in, and I'm always like, Mom, you don't need it. Too much is not a good thing. Too much of anything is not a good thing. So always check with a practitioner before supplementing on calcium. And then this was something that I stumbled across as well. So there are a couple of probiotics that have a specific probiotic strain, PS128. So in the research, preliminary research, there's not a lot of good quality clinical studies out there yet. So preliminary research shows that this specific probiotic strain, when taken for 12 weeks, along with the anti-Parkinson's meds, led to that improved the motor score, the UPDRS score, and quality of life in Parkinson's patients. So when I looked online, there were only 2 options out there for this probiotic supplement. A couple things though to keep in mind. There's not a lot of research. There's really just preliminary research. No like randomized controlled trials on it yet. When I looked on the Microvita, it doesn't have any reviews on their actual website. So there's that. And it can be kind of expensive. So I think the one was like $55 for like a 1-month supply. So I wanted to mention it in case you're like, I like to know like all the things, and like sometimes I like to try new things. So for me, I might be like, depending on where I was at, and that kind of thing. But again, there's just not a lot of research, but it is something that's out there and might be something worth watching, keeping an eye on, or talking with your doctor to see if they have any additional experience with it. All right, that is all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
These pictures make me hungry.
I know, I just said to Shannon earlier, I was like, this is just like a beautiful presentation, like just the beauty of it. I mean, the information was amazing, and yeah, I think that's really interesting, the slide before, what you showed about the prebiotics, because that is where there's a lot of research and a lot of information going on right now about gut health and the gut-brain connection with Parkinson's. So I think we're gonna see a big kind of change in management of disease symptoms related to diet. I really think we are, because there was just a big article that came out, we just talked about it about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I really appreciated how with the Mind Diet, you said like doing some is still good. It's not like all or nothing. So like because when it gets all or nothing, it feels very overwhelming to people starting out, or to traditional Midwestern eaters who are trying to kind of change their diet culture. I think so knowing that like you can do some of it, if you can do things that like the way the flyer is laid out too.
Or like what you said, you were like, try to just add to start, like just to add some of this rather than take away, and I think and then once you kind of develop a liking to it, then you can try to replace maybe.
Yeah, in a lot of the research, so there's, the 10 foods to choose, the 5 to limit. So in the research, they based it on 15 points. And so, and actually in that book, you can like kind of try like using it as like a point system. And in the research, like it wasn't perfect scores that were seeing all of the progress. Like it was,
So
people
getting
that
that
scored
book.
10 or 12 or 13 points. So, yeah.
We should do a little book club. We'll all do the Mind Diet, we'll keep track of our points. We'll see how healthy our 2026 is. Share if you want to.
That's great. Great.
I know, yeah, it is. Seems very doable, like, it does. And I do think just the food options and the shopping, and I'm gonna look at that VitaCost website. I whispered to Shannon, I'm like, we should put that on in our newsletter.
I'll try to put a link out in our newsletter and on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Kim?
Wealth of knowledge.
As always, Kim, that was excellent.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes. All ready to go out and be healthy.